Nigeria's oil sector contributed 5.66% to the country's total real gross domestic product in Q3 of 2022. Yet, its contemporary issues and constraints in managing optimally into the future of Nigeria's oil and gas are complicated and dynamic with domestic and international dimensions. There are challenges of concerns under the emerging circumstances that anchor on the governance of PIA implementation and macroeconomic instability from the oil and gas market shocks. Others include crude oil theft, insecurity of assets, increased cost of production, petroleum production, declining production capacity, and petroleum subsidy issues. Well, these issues are more tending to dominate the news circle in Nigeria. But let's review the performance of the industry. And I'm being joined by Dr. Ayodele Oni. He's, among other things, an energy lawyer and also an analyst. He joins me virtually. Thank you so much, Dr. Oni. Compliments of the season.
Same to you. Thank you very much for having me. Best wishes for the year 2023.
Yes, indeed, but not so well, because driving in today, we still see long queues everywhere across the country. Lagos, Abuja, and everywhere, despite all of the efforts by the NNPC and even the DSS meeting with the NNPC saying fuel tankers must get to petrol stations. Petrol stations must be wet at this time. But Dr. Oni, they are not wet. Many of them are dry as we speak. What is responsible for this? We actually went through this almost all through this year.
Okay. A number of things are responsible. I mean, some are more remote, some are closer than we think. Subsidy is one of them. And the fact that many of these marketers are unable to access USD, and I'll explain a bit more generally. And also, of course, there are reasons the demand has increased because we're in the festive period. A lot of people want to go around. That exacerbates the problem. I also understand that there was fire at Egbe and electricity availability then dropped. It then meant more people needed fuel. There's been hoarding also. So, because of subsidy, and you also can't, so there's limited supply because guys who are supposed to pick up petroleum products cannot even get USD to buy that product. That's a problem in itself. You also have the problem of some people hoarding and people looking to sell outside of Nigeria where prices are market-based. The subsidy in Nigeria, because of the subsidy regime, it's lower than even the cost of the landing price. So if it's lower than the cost of landing, it then means that they will get that difference from government. Marketers will get that difference from government via the NNPC. And the NNPC very recently has struggled, particularly for you to get USD. Imagine that we do not refine. We make $1 billion, $2 billion from selling crude, but we then pay much more to buy finished products. I know the NNPC does have a direct sale, direct purchase arrangement, but this does not completely solve the problem, and we see that. So there's insufficient numbers or volumes because marketers are not buying these or cannot get sufficiently. Some are hoarding, some are even selling outside of the country where it's more market driven. So subsidy too, you could actually say subsidy is probably the fundamental reason, because if everyone can sell at a premium or sell at a profit, regardless of where they buy gas from, you'd see competition in the market. You see people bring in petroleum products and they sell at a margin and they don't need to take it to Benin Republic, Togo, or elsewhere. So those are the challenges, regardless of any ultimatum given by the DSS or any other entity. If it's not available, then it's not available. It's not magic. So those are the reasons for what we see now.
So if
and of course, the festive period and the increase because of the fire at Egbe.
Now, Dr. Oni, if subsidy is the contending issue here, or is the problem, the elephant in the cupboard or in the room, do you think, because that's part of the implementation of the PIA, there's a stage where we need to get subsidy off one way or the other, but we've push that aside, put the evil days ahead of us. Now, do you think that this will not affect in totality the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act that we expect would attract investments into Nigeria's oil and gas industry?
Okay, so that's correct. You'd have to look at the industry from two broad prisms. One, oil, the other, gas. I don't see so much of a challenge with gas. In fact, the PIA does promote gas, and implementation seems to be going on really reasonably well. There are exposure draft of regulations. There are new regulations. The midstream authority and the upstream commission are doing quite a lot. So from gas, there's no problem. Natural gas, methane, octane, whatever it is. But from a crude oil point of view, you could also break that down into three. You've got upstream, midstream, and downstream, regulated by the authority, and you've got upstream. With upstream, there won't be so much of a challenge. The implementation challenge is with respect to downstream. So that's a good point. Because the idea is, and the interesting thing is, if you look at the PIA, it does say one thing in one breath and suggest another elsewhere. It does suggest that concepts such as subsidy and all of that will not continue. In another breath, it tends to give the authority the right to sort of manipulate prices, determine issues around pricing for petroleum products and all of that. So if it does give it those powers, then it means that you may still continue to have subsidy in some way. I would not necessarily run foul of the PIA. Lawyers and commercial people will always find a way around. Once a legislation lends itself to more than one interpretation. So that's what I think. I think that it doesn't necessarily impair the PIA or stop its implementation. If it does any of that, it's very, very minimal. Those are my own thoughts. Also because you can divide the industry into various segments: upstream, midstream, downstream, and gas and crude oil, or oil, generally speaking.
Let's talk around the crude oil market and the flip-flop we've seen in prices at the moment. Crude oil theft seems to be, I would not say we're getting at it, because the NNPC Limited is recording some profit, some improvement, which is of course profit, because once we have more crude to sell, we get more money. What do you think is happening with regards to oil theft? What will you say around this positives that we're seeing with price of our daily production, looking at what we now produce per day?
Okay, I didn't hear you completely. Was your question around
Dr. Oni, can you hear me now?
And crude oil prices?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I'm talking about we getting back to our production level. Okay, let's take a break. Let's take a break, Dr. Oni, and we'll be back and continue this discussion. Let's take a break. We'll take a break and we'll be back. All right, thank you for staying tuned. Now, I'm still having Dr. Ayodele Oni there speaking around Nigeria's oil and gas, of course, even the global market. So I was talking about the improvement we've seen in our daily production. It seems the NNPC Limited is recording some positives at this time.
Okay, so it's positive because production is increasing, and it does mean with oil prices we should be generating more revenues, and that should even impact income, impact our next budget. If we can continue to meet our quota, and if we can continue to ensure that there's a reduction in vandalism, a reduction in crude theft, then we'll continue to make that progress. And the export pipelines that were previously damaged or vandalized, some of that has been repaired. So we are back in line. And I understand that that's even looking to increase further in the next few weeks. In terms of oil, we're able to export. It's not about capacity to produce oil. The challenge has always been ability to move from production point to the export terminal. So I think that because of damage to pipelines and all of that, and sabotage, which we all see, and some of that is being resolved by the current administration. The administration has done quite well in that regard in the last few months, and a lot of progress has been made. So our production is back up and is improving.
So what is your projection for that market, even as the price has been hovering between $75, $80 in a while? We seem to be away from $90 per barrel, which we had earlier in the year.
Okay, the news from China tends to suggest that, I know, of course, China does play a big role in the international market in terms of consumption and volumes, but the news from China tends to suggest that prices are not going to go lower anytime soon, or if there's any reduction, it wouldn't be substantial. That's what I understand. And we're in the thick of winter, and of course, there's a correlation between gas prices and crude oil prices. So I think because it's even unusually cold, I mean, I'm not sure when last I did see so much snow in the UK. So with what we see in Europe, with the challenges around gas and European nations looking at other alternatives, I don't see crude oil prices going down so soon. The war is still ongoing. We don't seem to have a truce now. So I expect that crude oil prices will oscillate around that plus minus 5%, 10% marks of where it is at the moment for the first quarter of next year. That's my expectation. And from a Nigerian point of view, I expect that the gains we've made will continue. Every front runner in the next election seems to be very concerned about value addition to our crude. And with the Dangote refinery starting production Q1 next year, I expect that, or starting operations rather, Q1 next year, I expect that things will look up. I mean, subsidy will be removed later in that year, and we can discuss that. But I expect that there'll be more opportunity to invest, particularly gas and what the PIA now does as regards gas. The opportunity domestic supply obligation, which is now a statutory obligation. There's also one for even crude oil supply. So the PIA seems to do a lot and makes it more attractive. Even the fiscals are more attractive. It's lesser. You pay lesser as a participant in the industry. You pay lesser in taxes and all of those. So I see that there are a lot of benefits, and I think the industry is going to improve. We should be able to generate more revenues, particularly when we begin to add value in country. Because when you import petroleum products, there are 7 heads. There are around 7 heads. There's ship-to-ship payment, freight, insurance, a number of payments you would need to make when you import, unlike when you refine locally. I mean, prices are going to go up anyway if subsidy is removed, but it wouldn't be as high as if we're importing our own petroleum products compared to if we refine locally. So I see opportunities for investment across the value chain. Now you could even see it in a number of midstream gas projects, like the Optimera gas project in the Lagos Free Zone. So there are a number of projects going on, and I see some of them closing in the next few months. A lot of progress is being made on the Ajaokuta Kaduna-Kano pipeline, and a number of other projects related to the Nigerian gas pipeline project, and pipelines to be able to, that's still in concept, to be able to move gas to North Africa and ultimately Europe. So there's an alternative to Russia. So for us, there are positives. It looks like an interesting year, and for the world at large. And of course, issues around energy transition. I think that's slowing down. People are probably going to get more interested in reducing emissions, finding technology to capture more emissions safely or to reduce emissions. But carbon, gas, hydrocarbons will still be with us for a while. I think they continue to play a critical role. You see a number of European countries even going back to coal because of the issues with gas supply from Russia. So it just suggests that hydrocarbons, whether it's coal, bitumen, gas, and crude, gas in particular, will play a crucial role in the near future. Those are my projections for the first 2 quarters of next year.
Well, I give you 2 minutes for this now. Whoever becomes Nigeria's CEO next year, what are the quick wins for the oil and gas industry? Let's do this in 2 minutes. Just try to do this in 2 minutes.
Okay, quick things. Interestingly, I'd say the refining capacity is one of them. I know one of the government refineries is currently undergoing very quickly turnaround. I know the Dangote refinery too will be in operation very shortly. That's very important. Value addition in country. Gas, doing more with gas in terms of local utilization, increasing utilization, and also this interesting concept of gas flare monetization, the commercialization projects or transaction currently going on. If that can quickly be rounded up and people can begin to take what would have been flare gas and use it for projects, that's important. Another very important thing, I understand that the commission, the Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, is looking to sell a number of offshore blocks. If that can go on and more people can invest, that's a good win. Revenues from the government. The NLNG Train 7 too is something very important. So if all of this can be done in the first, say, 100 days, it'll be very positive for the next administration, particularly for the first 2 quarters of next year. Now, the subsidy challenge, if more can be done around electricity, you see the Siemens deal. If that deal, if it's well implemented and we have more public supply, then I am of the view that subsidy should be taken out for PMS. However, I don't think it should be taken out wholesale. I think it should be done in bits, in tranches, such that when we have regular power supply or more regular, you take a percentage off. As we begin to have other alternatives, see what Lagos State is doing with the Blue Line. Very brilliant project, so that less people use their cars and rely on fuel. The lesser people that rely on fuel, the less the impact of removal of subsidy. It then means that you use less fuel because you don't need to power your jet, you don't need to power your car and put fuel in your car every day. Even if you do, it'll be a fraction of what you currently use because you can up on a train. Or you could, there can be, government needs to build more car parks where people can park and ride the trains. Those are things I see in the immediate for the next administration, particularly value addition to crude oil production and also gas processing, so that we can have more cooking gas produced locally and even those cylinders too. So those are some of the quick wins I see, especially with the gas penetration project policy of the federal government too.
Dr. Ayodele Oni, I must thank you so much for your contributions. I really appreciate this. I guess we might be speaking
Thank you very
next.
much for having me.
It could be in 2023, God willing. Thank you so much. To have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance. I wish you well. Thank you.